talk about big projects like what's going on in White Sulphur Springs. We talk about the legacy of copper mining and silver mining in Butte, Montana. But mining is not just the big project. It's the project that's important to the community.
Right. I mean, it goes back to the, if it can't be grown, it must be mined truth. Sand is the #1 mined product in the world. People think that you just go down to the construction yard and have them dump some sand in the back of your truck. The reality is that sand was mined from somewhere. Aggregate, gravel, that is something that is mined very continuously, and we can't have roads, sidewalks, building foundations, sandboxes without it. Cement. I think most people probably think that you just get cement from a 84-pound sack down at the Home Depot. The reality is cement needs to be mined, and there's a very specific process that results in what goes into that bag. And Montana has two very great cement facilities in Montana, as well as a limestone facility over in the Townsend area. So all of these things come from the ground. And I do get, that exploit. That's kind of the nature of what you're doing. You're taking a rock and you're pulling the valuable fraction or the usable fraction out of it, and then you have to manage what's left behind in the waste. And what we're seeing now is, we've got the regulations in place to where we can make sure we manage that waste in a way that is safe for the surrounding environments. But now what we're looking at is what else might be in that waste stream that wasn't what we were looking for, that might be valuable at some point in time, and how might we economically extract that? Because the processes for taking small or secondary amounts of minerals or metals or elements out of a waste stream might not exist today. And that's where places like Montana Tech come into play. They have a great program in mining and mineral processing. They are keeping their eye focused on how we do things better and new things into the future, so that we have more of a circular process. And that's where, you hear arguments that, well, we don't need new mines. We can just recycle what's in our landfills and go back through tailings impoundments. And I will say this, we definitely should be and need to be doing that sort of thing. But there's no way, with the demand and the increases in demand we're going to see for copper and other things that go into the electrification or the energy transition or artificial intelligence and data centers, the demand for those materials is so far outpaced by what we can recycle or reuse, that recycling and reuse needs to become part of that supply chain, but it will never satisfy what our needs are. And I think copper is a great, this just blew me away when Taylor Melvin, he's the CEO of Ivanhoe Electric, he was our keynote speaker a couple of years ago at our annual meeting, and he gave a datum that was just mind-blowing. So at that point in time, from the beginning of civilization until 2023, we had utilized 750 million metric tons of copper just for the current population growth and maintaining a 3% GDP growth over time. By 2050, we were going to need an additional 750 million tons of copper. You're not going to recycle or reuse that, and we are going to have to develop responsibly deposits where we can continue to meet that demand. And at some point in time, maybe we can just kind of keep it all circular and you have smaller mines, but not anytime soon, not in our lifetime, not in our kids' lifetimes.
Yeah, oftentimes people think that because mining has taken place, you talk about those numbers, that it's a finite resource or a finite demand.
Yep.
And it's not a finite demand, it's a demand that is continuing.
Growing, and at this particular point in time with the advent of all, like we were talking, the energy transition and the technology transition. I mean, you're talking about things shifting now more into space, whether it be for satellites so we can communicate, or how we defend ourselves. If you're familiar with the Golden Dome initiative that our country is now embarking on, those things take massive quantities of elements that we aren't currently figuring into our just normal growth equation. So that 750 million metric tons of copper that's necessary just over the next 20, 30 years, that doesn't even include all of these things that I just mentioned. So it's actually much greater.
We did an interview with Jim Keane a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about just in the Berkeley pit, which at times is looked at as just the environmental scar.
Which it is.
Well, of course, that's some of the legacy that we have to build from and move forward with. But there are new processes, there's new life, new hope in some of those.
There are billions of dollars or millions of ounces of all sorts of valuable elements dissolved in the Berkeley pit or settled out along the bottoms and sides of that pit that we are actively working with Montana Tech, with other researchers on how can we extract those necessary good things from the Berkeley pit. And that's what we need to be looking at as we move into mining operations elsewhere. I mean, it's not economic to do it right now, but we got to find a way to make it such. And there's a lot of opportunity in things like the Berkeley pit or these tailings deposits that, even though they're being managed properly, there's a lot of stuff in those, like the Opportunity tailings over near Anaconda. There are billions of dollars worth of just copper sitting out there in those tailings, not to mention all of the other elements that were along for the ride in the process that weren't the target of the Anaconda company at the time. Zinc, cobalt, all sorts of things are in tailings, slag piles. And as we research at places like Tech and our national laboratories and our other mining schools, we're eventually going to crack the code on how you can do that effectively and efficiently. And it is going to take some strain over how many new mines we need to develop out there. But I think it's all going to be a balance.
One of the things, again, getting back to my experiences here, is folks come to Butte with an initial expectation. The Berkeley pit, the mining that has taken place here. But we try to tell the story of how important those future possibilities are, and that mining is not a static industry, but is a dynamic industry.
Very dynamic industry. And even so, I mean, now granted, the Berkeley pit is going to have to be managed in perpetuity, but I think we're at a stage now where we've identified what the good things are that we can get out of that. And I think at some point here in possibly our lifetime, that acidity level in the pit is going to even out to where it's not going to be as big of an ecological threat as it currently is. We're still going to have to manage it and continue to see how we can extract things from it. But look at the other massive impacts that took place because of the way things were done without heed for environmental impact during the heydays of the Anaconda Company, which were the first half of the 1900s, and how we have recovered from that. I mean, when I first started working in Superfund, which was before I was at Tech running the Clark Fork Watershed Education Program, I worked in the Superfund division of the local government, and even worked with Anaconda, Deer Lodge County and Powell County on the Clark Fork River. But that was back in the late 1990s. I never thought that in my lifetime, and I mean, I'm still relatively young, just 50s not too far behind me, but I never thought in my younger lifetime I would be able to take my kids out to Silverbow Creek to catch native West Slope cutthroat trout. But we have restored that watershed so that is possible. The hundreds of miles of impacted uplands from the Anaconda smelter are now teeming with life, whether it's aspen trees or native forbs, and the animals that utilize those are coming back in, where it wasn't that long ago that it was a moonscape. And so we can address and fix the mistakes from the past, whether it be regulatory, which we're doing, or the physical damages that have occurred. We can go back in and fix those things. And that's something that you should never sell short what we can do as a race and a society, is we can advance to not only do things better, but fix the things that weren't done right the first time.
Sure.
Or we can hire attorneys and prevent things from happening, or file lawsuits and come up with very sound arguments on why this shouldn't be allowed or isn't legal.
My wife and son and I spent the last 7 years back and forth between Hawaii, Washington, D.C., and Butte, and wanted to stay in Butte, so that's why we're back again. And it is amazing, if nothing else, the thought process, the vision of Butte as the ultimate example of the nature of mining that has changed, to your point, of that we can more than we can point fingers.
Yeah, well, that's another one of Butte's wonderful nicknames, the can-do city. I mean, I think we can do things better and do things right, and we are. And I think we can even do more if we continue to work together and identify how we can do things properly. Again, I think White Sulphur Springs and the Black Butte project is a very good example of how that can be done. But we're doing things great here in Butte with Montana Resources, working with the community to do things the right way here. And they're another great example. Stillwater Mining, our nation's only platinum group metal mine. They are mining beneath a wilderness area with no negative impacts. I mean, we can do these things in the most challenging environments on Earth. And when I say challenging, it's how do you extract and protect at the same time? I think Stillwater is a perfect example of how we can do that.
Back to the February 9th Montana Mining Days, that seems to be a hallmark of what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to make sure that people understand that we can do these things.
It is. Obviously we selected that date as a homage to our heritage and how important mining was to this state. And we have a date on the calendar now, and that date takes place in the middle of the school year. So we look forward to trying to engage our schools across the state, but our general public as well. Not only do we want to celebrate our history, we want to educate about how we do mining today, what lessons we've learned, and how we are going to continue to improve and mine for the future. And that's something that's been missing. We always are just nose to the grindstone or head in the hole for working what we have to do, and not paying attention to what others are thinking or saying or doing around us. And I think this is a good example and a launch point for us to build that into our operation. We need to be having an ongoing dialogue with our schools, with our communities, with people that are our adversaries today that I think can be partners in helping us develop responsible mines in the future.
That's an interesting point. I'm thinking about what the World Museum of Mining has done with the underground mine tour as an example. It lends itself in my mind to when folks come to visit, they can now empathize with the position of those who did the work here, as well as those who are responsible for managing the resources as it exists today.
Yep, very good. And I mean, I think, the other aspect here is that memorial for the 2,300 men who died directly from accidents or safety shortfalls underneath the ground here in Butte. And the reminder that folks need to acknowledge that we've taken the steps to where that doesn't happen here anymore. I think there has been 2 fatalities since the Berkeley pit opened in 1955. We do things safe and proper today, and even across the entire United States. It's still inherently a very dangerous profession to be a miner, and even more so in underground miners. So we do have some fatalities every year, but nothing along the lines of what they used to have. And if you prevent us from doing these things, which are necessary, we cannot live life the way we do without them. If we prevent those projects from being developed in the right places in America, they are being done the same way they were being done that cost those thousands of men their lives in other places, and costing rivers and watersheds and ecosystems the life that was there before those projects were developed. And so if you call yourself an environmentalist and you feel good about hanging your hat on making sure that this mine didn't take place in Montana or Idaho or Nevada, or pick a place in the United States, just know that it's being done at a much greater harm to the environment and society somewhere else. So I ask you, how much did you really accomplish?
Well, and is it fair? You know, is it fair to expect someone else to expend the toll of, you know?
Dan, I think you hit on a perfect point, and I don't have probably direct evidence to prove this, but I think that's how we got to where we are in the first place. At some point in the 1970s, I believe it probably would have been, we decided, whether it was deliberate or not, we decided as a society that we were doing so well that we didn't necessarily need to have these dirty industries in our backyard. We could pay someone else to do it where they lived, and we will just buy the products. And so systematically, starting in that time period through, recent times, and I think we're trying to reverse that now that we're seeing that we actually depend on some folks that probably don't share our future visions for those necessary materials. We've been systematically shipping mines and processing facilities and refineries and smelters to other countries, and now we are at a stage where we know we can do it better than any other place, and we need to be able to control our own destiny on these things. So I think it's coming full circle.
That's an excellent point, is that it's you cannot continually push off the responsibilities, push off the sacrifices onto someone else
without consequences.
And
the consequence, the environmental consequences, or the social and labor consequences on the people that are mining in those projects, that's something that we don't notice, at least not directly. But when all of a sudden the pipeline for those materials making their way back to Montana and America are shut off, then we notice. And that's what has grabbed our attention here, is China has amassed a stranglehold on some of the most vital elements we need to defend ourselves and to continue to advance technology. And that's what has led to this epiphany that, holy smokes, we actually do need to mine and process these things in our own backyard here. And so, there's actually a group called Better in Our Backyard that's out there trying to awaken folks to the fact that we can do these things responsibly here. I want to get t-shirts made that say act globally, mine locally. We have the better regulations and assurances that mining is going to be done responsibly here. So let's mine things local, and by extension, we're doing better things for the globe.
Absolutely, and it also is, to me, is the sign of a mature society which can realize that you act responsibly, act locally, and it has a rippling effect of making the community as a whole better.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, and that goes for copper, but it goes for all of these much smaller and let's call them niche elements that are necessary for our smartphones, the magnets that propel self-guided missiles or defense systems. I mean, these things are, whereas copper, we go through millions of tons of it on a regular basis. You might only go through a couple tons of some of these singular elements, but that doesn't make them any less important.
You're still going to have to dig for them.
You are going to have to dig for them or find a way to extract them from waste piles or streams that are already there or in process.
Well, like you mentioned Montana Tech in terms of some of their things that they're doing to further along the further development of the resources that have been dug up so far, as well as what we need in the future.
And we have a lot of opportunities here in the mines that are operating in Montana. Like we're looking at, obviously, what can be extracted out of the Berkeley pit and the waste streams there. We've got a lot of opportunities at the Zabanye Stillwater mine on what can be extracted from their slags over there that are currently going into a waste stream. The Black Butte copper mine has appreciable levels of some of these critical elements that are at this point going to end up in the underground backfill in their mine, that we'd like to work with Tech and other researchers to see if there's ways to economically be able to get those elements out of the tails before they're used in backfill. So lots of opportunities out there. You just got to work on them.
I'm thinking of another industry that has had its ups and downs in recent years because of the continuing viewpoints of the moment. The coal industry is another one.
Yeah, coal industry is definitely faced some real challenges as of late. But I think the reality is, with all of this additional electricity that we're going to be needing to run these data centers or to electrify pretty much everything, it takes a long time to be able to develop our grid further and tie into all of these renewable sources, where we know coal is kind of the battery backup or the base load power that can continue to provide us the electricity we need unequivocally until we figure out how to shore all those things up. And then the other part of that is there's a lot of research that is identifying rare earth elements and critical minerals that are in the coal waste streams. In fact, there's even one coal mine in Wyoming that is claiming to have a primary source of gallium in the coal that can also be sent to thermal use.
Well, that's to the point of the whole China thing.
Yep.
I mean, we rely on you talking about defense systems, you're talking about just a simple cell phone, or I guess my point is that not our enemy, but our adversaries at times can hold that over our heads. And so we need to have a responsible means of being able to provide for our own.
And that's what I think is, this first came to light, I think, and when I say this, it's China's control of those materials. First came to light in about 2010 when they were in a dispute, I believe, over fishing waters with Japan. But for whatever reason, they just shut off the pipeline of rare earth elements to Japan, and Japan was crippled until they were able to restore their ability to gain those things. And that's when we started saying, hey, that could be us. We depend on China as much as Japan depends on them for those exact same elements. In fact, by extension, Japan still makes a lot of our electronics that require those. And so we felt that pinch when that happened then too. And so that's when I think it first really started to become an urgent issue. And we just haven't been moving fast enough to fix it. And here we are 15 years later, we still haven't solved that issue, but we're coming closer. And that's because right now, I mean, they just came out with a renewed list, and I believe there's 60 critical elements now that the nation has deemed as we have to, these are threatened. And so we need to do something to find a stable supply of them. China has restricted the export of 23 of those 60 to where they will not export them to the US, particularly for defense uses, but other uses as well. And I did just read a headline to where They may have relaxed the list a little bit for a year based on meeting some of these trade constraints that the U.S. and China are going through, but we can't depend on them not to be able to just turn that right back off again. And so that's what you're saying. I mean, they might not be, outright enemies of ours right now, but we are in very intense competition with them, and those financial wars, so to speak, are going to play heavily into how they control our supply of things that they control the pipeline to.
A dynamic world, a dynamic country, a dynamic community relies upon not just betting that everything's going to be all right from day to day.
I mean, there's evidence that shows our founding fathers acknowledged that having a ready supply of our own materials is what was going to be necessary for the long-term stability of our country, and we've strayed a little bit away from that. It's time we get back to it, because we can do it better than any other place.
That brings up another important element in terms of the mining industry is, of course, in addition to the overall strategy of maintaining a society, it also is the employer. It's an important part of keeping people in the state of Montana, to use the Montana Mining Association's call.
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing, I'm sure someone from that area could probably speak more directly to this, but because of some of the global markets in that, Stillwater had to lay off almost 800 people a little over a year ago. Those people didn't just stop working, they most likely took jobs out of state, and they're not going to come back. So I mean, those are important things to consider. But the other thing we're seeing in mining that we're also trying to address is the average age of our worker, and the pipeline to fill those positions is not panning out. We need more of our youth to understand what opportunities there are for them in this industry, so we can continue to do those things seamlessly, really. Think about 70% of mining projects that have faced some sort of a production decline have said that it's because they can't find the workforce to do the work that's required. And so those are things we need to do. We need to work on building our workforce, and in keeping the one that's currently supporting a lot of our communities going. Like Butte's another good example. We have got 400 plus people that are directly employed by the mine here in Butte, and that accounts for up to a quarter of the revenues for our local government. You can't just take something like that away overnight. And so I think maintaining these responsible operations and continuing to find the workers we need to keep them going is really something important. We haven't done a economic impact in a couple of years now, but the last time we did one in 2023, the mining industry in Montana, and this was just the hard rock industry, it didn't include coal. The hard rock mining industry in Montana in 2023 was responsible for $7.3 billion in economic output. We employed directly, indirectly, and induced over 18,000 jobs, and contributed $400 million in taxes to the state and local governments. And that's a significant economic sector.
One of the things this summer, I had a family that came in from Illinois, and their son was working for Norfolk Southern Railroad. But they came here and did the underground mine tour as an example. And it piqued the interest of several of the kids there, because it's an industry, getting back to Jim Keen's conversation, that people love. And that as long as they're educated about the possibilities, that it's not just one side of the discussion. It's a free-ranging discussion as to the good, the bad, and how you factor in education and
yeah, freight is. Railroads are another part of this nation and our state's backbone, right? And that's how we move goods and people around for a good part of the previous century. And so they're also finding ways to do things better in the context of their environmental footprint, but also their effects on communities and other industries in today's day and age. And they'll continue to improve too.
How do you see the Montana Mining Association helping to educate that young workforce as to the possibilities?
Well, I mean, again, things like Montana Mining Day are a start. And so we've got a lot planned for this inaugural year. I mean, first of all, we got a cool t-shirt that was designed by John Wick's team here in Butte that we're hoping to get on a lot of bodies out there with the help of some of our mining company sponsors. But we are setting up significant activities to take place in all of our major cities in Montana to focus on the importance of mining to, again, our past, present, and future here in Montana. And it's also going to be an opportunity for us to announce or launch efforts that are going to start being done by the Mining Association and its partners like the World Museum of Mining all through the year. And so, we've been talking about developing a speaker series where we have mining related speakers speak in public venues on a regular basis. We're going to start doing that this year. We had a great discussion in our last planning meeting on establishing a Montana Mining Hall of Fame that the World Museum of Mining would host those actual physical awards up here, and we would work with them in coming up with a process on how we would select and acknowledge the individuals that would be in that Mining Hall of Fame. I mean, it is such an important part of our heritage, but it's also an important part of our future that it needs to be celebrated, and the people that make it successful need to be celebrated too. And the idea comes from we have a National Mining Hall of Fame in Colorado that gets a lot of attention every year, but like in Montana, we have a Montana Outdoor Conservation Hall of Fame that celebrates some of the folks that have been able to help us preserve Montana as this special place. And the newspapers and the news stations do a big effort to acknowledge who these individuals are that get inducted into this Hall of Fame every year. We need the same sort of effort placed on our industry because it's every bit as important, and it has a lot to do with how and why we preserve some of these areas too. So I think having a Montana Mining Hall of Fame can do a lot for getting that next generation understanding and celebrating with us how important this industry is to Montana, not just its history as the treasure state, but its future as the treasure state.
That's the point. You have the past we learn our lessons from. The future we live for, but the present requires us to be able to bridge the gap between the two.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's true of any industry. I mean, mining just maybe has had some of its mistakes amplified more than other industries, and so I think folks are more aware of it. There's certainly a lot of entities that pay closer attention to it than some of the way you see other industries improve. So that's our job.
Well, it gets back to, and this has been a great discussion, it does get back to, in the sense, the bumper sticker.
It does. People are busy and busier every day that goes by. So you only have their attention for a short span. The amount of time it takes to read a bumper sticker, I would like to think we never get to where we have less of their attention span than that, but it is. We have to tell our story in an effective way, and so that's part of something that I think we can work with the World Museum of Mining and our other partners on making sure we do that right.
Matt Vincent, Executive Director of Montana Mining Association. Great start of a conversation.
Thanks, Dan. Look forward to coming back.
You bet.
My sweetheart's a mule in the mine. I drive her with all all over my sweetheart's behind. My sweetheart's a mule in the mine. I drive her with only one line. On the backboard I sit, tobacco I spit, all over my sweetheart's behind.